Welcome to the Rap Thought Podcast. And for this episode, we are going to be looking at Goodie Mob's Soul Food.
Goodie Mob's Soul Food. So I feel like a lot of people will know. A lot of people know CeeLo Green from The Voice. If you remember Gnarls Barkley, and oh man, I just dropped the single that they had, Crazy. Crazy that came out. He also had his own solo career, but before then, it was Goodie Mob. Goodie Mob standing for. Well, we'll talk about that later.
we'll get into that. Don't you worry. What is this your first time listening to Goodie Mob?
Dude, it's my first time listening to Goodie Mob. I feel like at least the last couple ones we've done is like, this is my first time. This is my first time.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is my first time listening to Goodie Mob. I've always heard about them. Mm-hmm. Obviously, CeeLo Green. And I've heard about, Goodie Mob, the Dungeon family. Obviously, they're associated with Outkast.
Yeah.
So it's like...
And that right there, like, we both said we haven't personally listened to Goodie Mob. We've both grown up listening to Outkast, though.
Right.
So we've heard of Goodie Mob. We just haven't heard their solo stuff by themselves.
Yeah, so, I don't know. For me, after listening to this album, I'm kind of, like, mad at myself for not having listened to Goodie Mob before. Mm-hmm. Or, like, I think I kind of wrote off the South as a whole when I was younger. Like, when I was first getting into hip-hop, paying attention to it, and going back and listening to all the older albums, I'm mainly focused on the West Coast, the East Coast, and then, like, Detroit.
Right, and I have to say, I'm going to speak for myself. I'm not going to speak for everyone, but the only South representation I would say that I have was Ludacris and Outkast.
Right.
That's kind of it. But, I mean, again, growing up, it's like what was hot on the radio at that moment.
Right.
And it's a lot of Outkast, there's a lot of Ludacris. And a couple other people too. And then, later on, then we got Lil Jon and the East Side Boys.
But even like artists from like Texas, like obviously I had listened to Ghetto Boys. Mm-hmm. Like I knew about them, but I didn't really like go back and like study and pay attention, listen to like Scarface and
I didn't listen to UGK. I didn't listen to
Bun B, like
Slim Thug. I wasn't listening to those people.
Right. I wasn't either. And I'm not exactly sure why. I think I may have just like been stuck in my own, like not stuck because I was listening to a wide range of hip hop at the time. I think just the South just didn't I didn't gravitate towards it. Nothing really grabbed me. I mean, Outkast was cool, but at the same time, I was focused away from stuff that was on the radio.
Yeah.
So I was putting my attention elsewhere. And I think, obviously, I'm young and kind of, I get stuck in my own head and I'm like, oh, I'm not going to listen to that. That's on the radio. Like, that's garbage. I don't listen to that. And, I kind of did myself a disservice, I think.
I think at the same time, too, as adults, we can review over the stuff and actually comprehend the content that they're talking about. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we're still young, but we grew up in a different era where, like, we don't have Spotify. We can't just be like, oh, I've heard of this artist. Let me just, like, download the discography and listen to it. Like,
back then, I mean...
We couldn't even go on... But think about it, too. We couldn't even go on YouTube and be like, oh, let me just listen to them. We couldn't do that either.
Yeah, when we were super young. I mean, when we were in high school, in middle school...
No.
We had LimeWire.
Illegally.
Yeah, I mean...
So we're trashing our parents' computers to like do that.
Yeah.
But I mean, the on top of that though, we have to have heard enough of their stuff to get our interest and then do that. So like right now with Spotify, we can just be
it's so much easier to go back.
Yeah, we can just be like, oh, like who is
this
person?
I don't know about you, but growing up, I didn't have anyone to influence my musical taste or influence me in hip hop. My older brother wasn't into hip hop at all. He didn't listen to it. I didn't have anyone. None of my friends were into it as much as I was. So it was literally me on my own doing my own research.
Yeah, and that's
I didn't have anyone older to be like, hey, you need to listen to this album. Like, don't skip over the South. Like, there's good shit coming out of here.
Yeah, and that's the same. Like I said, my mom listened to jazz, and she's not as much into hip hop as she once was. My older brother, 17 years older than I am, he has his own life, doing his own thing. So I don't have anyone necessarily around me. And of course, growing up in West County of Sonoma County, predominantly people are listening to country around here. So to get that influence, to get those suggestions is slim to none. People are already listening to stuff that you're listening to.
And like listening to this album now, I think if I heard this back when I was in high school, middle school, whatever, I think I would have loved it.
Really?
Absolutely. Like this is the type of music that I was really into, and I'm still into. But like at that time, even when I was like so like into like underground hip hop, like West Coast, East Coast, but this would have fit in perfectly with my taste, like just with the beats, the type of songs, like the rhymes. I would have loved it.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have, because back, in that time, like I was really into, like, I'm not gonna say that this sound is it's mellow. It's not trash at all, but it's not like, it doesn't get you hyped up or anything like that. At the time growing up, I was looking for that type of music. I wanted to get hyped up. I wanted to, I just wanted to go crazy and dance off some stuff. This wouldn't have done that for me back then, and especially now because I didn't have.
But, so when you're listening to music back then, like you wanted hype music, but you didn't want any music to just like put on while you're chilling at home, or to put on your headphones while you walk somewhere, or drive to school, or whatever.
That's the thing, is that like I wasn't, if you were to ask, what would I say, 12-year-old, I remember my cousin got the Stankonia album, and if you were to ask me at that time, like, hey, what are they talking about that album, I would have no idea, but it sounds great. It's awesome. Yeah. We have Bombs Over Baghdad. We have, Miss Jackson. We have all those albums. So I'm going to use that as an example of what I was looking for and what I would play in the background, because I liked how it made me feel. I liked how it sounded, but I don't really know what it's talking about. But that album is more up tempo than this album.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's kind of all.
I mean, this album is not made for the radio at all. Like this.
No.
Most of these songs are 5 minutes long, and it's a lot of rapping.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of hooks. Even though CeeLo Green's on this album, there's not a lot of singing. He does it a few times, but not much. Like, this is just straight rapping.
Yeah. To be honest, man, I didn't even notice that I didn't realize there were 4 members in the group until earlier, because Big Jip, and Cujo sound similar. But I would say that Jip is more, I preferred him lyrically.
They both have those kind of like rough, aggressive voices.
Those really gruff, kind of slowed down voices and everything. But those, the 4 members, CeeLo, Cujo, Timo, and Big Jip, they only put together 3 albums as a whole. The third one not doing so well, and at that point CeeLo went and did his own solo career. But
this first album, Soul Food, I think had a huge impact, and I feel like after listening to this, I can totally hear how some of the other artists came after this album were influenced by it, like namely like Living Legends and that whole crew. Even on the West Coast, I feel like they took a lot from Goodie Mob and the South, and from Outkast. Like specifically this album, a lot of like the production, like they put like weird, like Organized Noize, they put a lot of like weird sounds into the beats.
And that actually made me think of Nappy Roots a little bit too. Yeah. Just with that sound. So
So I think in that sense, like this album was, even though it wasn't the most popular album, but I think it had an influence on a lot of people.
Yeah, and adult Brandon will say, I will say, that I really do like this album. Like I said, teenage me would not like this, but I like this now. I like that mellow kind of feel, those hard,
when I was a teenager, I was into music like this. Like I wanted like chill, like just dope hip hop with just rhymes. I wasn't looking really for the hype music.
Yeah.
I liked stuff like this that you can like, there's so much to around Goodie Mob. Like, oh, you can get into the Dungeon family and to Organized Noize and then Outkast, and like there's so many things connected with it. As like that would have been really fun for me to discover and to go down all those different paths related to this album.
So we're both saying that we haven't heard their solo project, but where have you heard some of the members, if not all of them?
I mean, obviously, you know, CeeLo Green's solo stuff and with Gnarls Barkley, Outkast. So just like here and there, but never like, and I've always heard their name come up when other artists talk about their influences. But yeah, just I didn't really know much about them.
Yeah, I have to say for me, like, I like Outkast, and I think on AT-Aliens, there's a song where I can't remember the name, but I can hear Cujo rapping, and I remember out of the four members, I didn't vibe with him the most, just from like lyrically. There's the content that he was talking about was cool, but at some points it's I'm gonna go all over the place, but you know, it's interesting when you have a group of four people and you have, okay, this is what we're going to talk about in the song, and you have four different perspectives. I have to say, with Cujo's perspective, I got lost sometimes. Like, I get what he was saying, but it was almost off from what everyone else was saying, though, too. That I feel in a lot of songs, I needed CeeLo Green to come back and kind of define the song for me and actually give me what the song was about. Everyone else kind of, you know, stayed somewhat true to it, but CeeLo like really cleaned it up for me. His verses out of the whole album, I felt like his were the cleanest. It made the most sense.
And that was probably CeeLo's like influence of like, it was probably him like orchestrating the songs and like, you know, giving direction and trying to like hone it in on where the album's going to go. And I think I read that's partly why he left the group, is because like they just had a lot of disagreements of what direction to go with the music. So he's like, all right, I'm just going to go off on my own. And obviously with his solo career, like he made the right decision. Like he knew what he wanted and how he wanted to do his music, and it worked for him.
Yeah, it definitely worked for him out in the end. But they came back together for a new album in 2012, I think it was, Age Against the Machine. I'll have to listen to it at some point. But
yeah, I mean, after listening to this album, I'm definitely interested in checking out their other stuff. I don't like, just from reading online and stuff about it, I don't think they put out anything that's as good as this album. So I'm not like super hyped to go and listen to it, but
not gonna rush check it out. But from this album though, I am interested to see what other projects they put out. But I won't lie, like it's mostly to see production wise what they were doing, because it is the South puts out a very distinct sound, and so I want to check out other artists to see, like, you know, from the South, what did you rap onto? Like, that's very interesting.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I mean, the Organized Noize produced this whole album. Who they produced Outkast, first couple of albums. They're part of the Dungeon family, and they produced for TLC. They produced for a lot of artists. So they're at this point in '95 when this album came out, like they're working with Goodie Mob is working with Organized Noize, which is they're already big in the game. Like they're not nobodies,
right?
You know, so like that's pretty cool that they're working with producers like that on that level.
Yeah. I liked it. You know, kind of heading in the album as a whole talks again, you have four different perspectives talking on the same point, but you know, being different. But with that said, the different songs all talk about something different, which leads to why the album is called Soul Food, which I thought was really cool. We'll definitely touch on that later. But you know, from the first song, like it's called Free, and when I was listening to it, it has this plantation feel of like these people. in the fields just singing this song of ultimately being free and the chains come off and being able to do what you want to do.
Right.
And that's definitely a prelude to the rest of the album because they talk about being stuck. They basically talk about being stuck. And, you know, it's hard to come up from where you are because you're just so far down on the totem pole and it's just such in a bad spot that you are where you are.
Right.
Going to thought process.
That was because the first song, Free, is more of like an interlude.
Right.
It's kind of like an introduction to the album. But yeah, thought process I was like kind of blown away. I was like, wow, like this is dope. Like this is the kind of music that I love. And it's got Andre 3000 on there. And at first, like, I didn't realize because I was listening to the album on Spotify and I don't think it mentions that he's a feature on there.
Does it not?
I don't think so. So like when I'm listening to it, I'm like, wait, that sounds like Andre.
Yeah.
And obviously I knew he was associated with them. Yeah, it doesn't say featured.
Oh, it has Big Boy as the feature though for Dirty South.
Yeah, but not Andre. So like when I'm listening to it, I'm like, wait, that's Andre. Like
that was a nice
has
little
to be him.
surprise. Yeah, like you said, I don't know if that's a Spotify mess up or what, but it was cool hearing him on there. 'Cause I was like, oh, that's fresh. But I mean, that song was cool because it's just talking about, you know, being in a troubled spot and competing with each other over resources and to the point where you're killing people over resources and living day by day in order to survive. If you ever see the movie, you know, Coach Carter or Freedom Riders, you know, one of the main things in there is that we don't expect to live to 21 or 25 or anything. We're taking each day at a time. So maybe think of those narratives where it's like, yeah, we don't have a whole lot to work with and it's competitive out here. So we're going to do what we need to do to make it to the next day. I'm not worried about 5 years from now. I'm not planning for college. I'm not, you know, going to do this 9 to 5.
Yeah.
That's not enough.
Yeah, they don't have that luxury of thinking about that stuff.
Right. And it's cool because, like I said, like this album, it kind of comes back and touches on all these things. So, but they did a great job just, you know, all talking about that and, you know, giving their perspectives on that thing.
And then goes into the Dirty South.
I was reading that with their influence, they basically coined the term Dirty South.
Right.
I thought that was pretty cool because, yeah, we, you know, like I said, growing up and you hear that all the time and then to hear where it actually originated from, it's like, oh, okay, right. That's cool.
Yeah, and they got Big Boy on that song. So they're definitely like, you know, utilizing other artists that are in their, you know, in their surroundings, and they're putting them on this album and kind of like, they're definitely like focusing on that sound that they want to put out, like that South sound that is unique to their area,
right?
Which I think is really cool that they're like really focusing on that. Like they don't want to try to be like the West Coast. They don't want to try to be like the East Coast sound. Like they want to have their own identity.
Yeah, and it's like you think about it now, and there's I feel like people trying to be like them. One of the people that comes to mind is Big Crit. Like he kind of sounds like Cujo and Big Gip, but just lyrically more gifted than that.
Right, and with the production, like it's cool. Like it's subtly different. It's not so drastic. It's not like, whoa, what kind of sound is this? It definitely it just has like a southern flair to it, which makes it a little bit different. It's got like weird sounds in the production, like kind of like, you know, abstract a little bit.
Yeah, I can see that. Maybe a couple. I don't know if I heard some banjos in a couple songs, but
right, just like subtly different. That like makes it known that this is from the South.
Yeah. I liked it. And then listening to, you know, their single from the album, Cell Therapy, that was a cool song because, I mean, I grew up in Marin County for a little bit and, you know, grandparents lived out in Richmond and, you know, there's those, it made me think of those doors that you have where you see them in apartment complexes where like it's a gate on your door, where, you know, living out here, you don't really see that. And he's talking about hey, like, are they keeping people out like they're saying, or are they trapping us in? Like, are we the problem and you're trying to keep us in as we're in this environment, we're all competing against each other and everything. So it's kind of made me think of that.
Yeah, really, really interesting song. I mean, again, it's like an interesting choice to put that as a single, but it's a cool song. It's got a cool beat.
With that said, how do you think that would do as a single today?
I don't think it would be a single. I don't even. Yeah, there's no way. I don't think anyone would put that out. I mean, if you're underground or you're independent, you could put out whatever you want.
Right.
But if you were signed to a major label, I don't think they're putting that song out as a single.
I agree.
I don't think, but
I agree. But it almost has you wondering. I mean, I feel like you have to, have your foot set, and in order to put something out like that, like if we had never heard of them and they dropped this album, I don't know how well that would go.
Right.
As you said, like in an underground setting, they can do whatever they want and they'll be fine. They'll get a following, but probably not enough of one to, stay current and relevant.
Right. And then going into Guess Who?
Ode to Mom. Like, it's,
Yeah, that I was like kind of surprised when I was listening to that song. I was like, oh, it's Ode to their mom. Like, I was like, this is cool. Yeah, I like that.
It is cool because I mean, I feel like in American culture, we want to say that we respect women and everything, but I don't feel it doesn't come off that way sometimes. And I think it's cool. I'm gonna go all over the place a little bit again, but where let's say you want to use the stereotype of like, oh, this is thug music and everything like that, and we're into drugs and we don't treat women as queens and they're just hoes or whatever else. But it's like you have these songs like this, Tupac did one where it's like, no, my mom's my first. She raised me to be who I am, and she struggles and everything, and but she made it work. And so that's kind of where this song was coming from. That no matter what stereotype you want to throw in, like our mothers are our rocks and they come first, and it's cool to see these tracks.
Yeah.
To give that back.
Absolutely.
But I don't know. Serenity Prayer was I don't know. It's there were two tracks on here that were the beginning for the next one. Serenity Prayer for this one.
Kind of like an intro.
Right. And then there is a Funeral for I Didn't Ask to Come. So those ones are kind of, going into that. But Serenity Prayer led into probably my favorite track on this album, which was Fighting. I like the feel of that song. I like the singing in that. And the hardest rhymes come from CeeLo, who says he doesn't have a verse, but he's still rhyming, but it's offbeat and everything.
Right.
And, he dropped nuggets of knowledge in that track. A lot. He talks about being down in the dumps and disease, poverty working against us, making it hard to come up, which, this is the 8th track. So it's kind of bringing the first 7, full circle. And just this, I don't know if you call it a monologue or soliloquy, but, it's just him going off and talking about things. But also in this track is where he talks about no, it's not an acronym, but what Goodie Mob stands for, which is the good die mostly over bullshit.
Right.
And so, hey, if we're in these houses where, in cell therapy, where it's like we're locked in, and if we're killing each other, going back to thought process, if we're killing each other over resources, it's like, and we're not expecting to live to a long age, like, yeah, we're killing each other over some stupid shit. Right. And this is what's going on. The other thing that caught me, one of his lines was, if I put it in a verse, you'll listen to some bullshit first. And I actually thought of a Andre 3000 song, Hey Ya, because that song is very upbeat, right?
Right.
It's got the guitar going and everything. It's not an upbeat song. It's not an upbeat song if you've listened to it. I'm going to let you all listen to that song and tell me that it's a good story and everything. But it's basically like it's not a happy song if you actually listen to the lyrics. And so it made me think of what he's saying here is that, you know, I can give you this knowledge, I can give you everything you need to hear or whatever else, but you're not going to listen to it. You're going to want to go and listen to someone else that's putting up some hype music.
Right.
Such as what I was doing as a kid that we talked about. I was looking for the hype music. I'm not looking for this deep stuff. I just want to feel. But, you know, it wasn't until like 25, which is when the brain fully develops, that
now you're like, oh, let me listen to something that's going to give me some depth or give me some perspective.
Right.
Which is pretty amazing that artists wanted to put out music like that. Like, I feel like it was going against the grain, so to speak.
And that's what I was kind of asking, like, you know, what do you think about Cell Therapy being released now? And just in general, like these deep albums. We've talked about Tupacalypse Now. We've talked about Return to the Boom Bap. I personally don't think that these albums would do as well if they were released today.
Oh, hell no. Not at all. Because back then, first of all, hip-hop wasn't as popular, so it wasn't so dependent on radio and being popular music. So the people who were paying attention to the hip-hop and purchasing albums, like, they're coming off of being fans of Rakim and Run DMC and artists like that. Yeah, that are putting out, you know, music with substance to it. So Keras One and Goodie Mob, like, they fit into that vein. It wasn't until 97, 98 with Diddy and that's when things kind of changed towards, you know, being much more popular and more polished and, you know, more about party music, so to speak.
And that, I mean, you kind of I'd have to write them down, but I mean, I really feel you didn't lose all the content behind the music, but it definitely went in a different direction of like, let's, you know, we just want to just this hype and everything. And I feel like that's kind of taken over now, where people are just, you don't even have to say anything in your raps, you can just mumble in it and that'll sell.
Right.
So I don't know. Another question for you too, like, do you think that for a person like me who is into the hype stuff but now appreciates and cherishes now stuff with content, do you feel like this generation that's into the mumble rap may go back to may look for content?
Yeah, I think everything comes full circle. And obviously hip hop has tended to be more of a young man's game, like with the artists being at the top. So those are those artists going to grow, and are the fans going to grow with the artists? Like, are the artists themselves going to put out more music with substance? Are they going to be like, you know what, like, I want to talk about this now. I want to be more conscious with what I'm putting out there. Or are they going to fade away, and then the fans are going to want that substance? I think they're going to want it eventually as they grow older, like you did when you turned 25. Like, okay, now I want something else. I want to think about things on a deeper level. It'll go back to it 100%, and those fans will go back, and they'll
remember the
want
roots
to hear something else.
They'll remember the roots of like what they grew up enjoying, as we do. So that's actually, you mentioned full circle. I think that'd be interesting to see like where it is, and then like 5-10 years from now, going back into more content, more depth, and what if like some form of early 90s hip hop made a comeback where they're talking about all these social issues and everything.
I mean, we definitely, with that being said, I think socially aware and music with substance is still at the top, though. Like, you still have Kendrick, J. Cole. Like, those artists are at the top.
I'm gonna say they're outnumbered, though.
They're outnumbered, but
there are more artists with Lil in the front of their name than there are the J. Coles and the Kendricks.
Right, but they still hold. They're still at the top. Like, they still hold the crown, and they have incredible influence.
I agree.
Yeah, you're right. There's not as many of those artists at the top, but it's still there. It's not like it's disappeared. It's not like it's completely gone. We do still have artists that are putting out quality messages.
Yeah, we still do. I mean, that's just me being like, man, I wish there was still a lot of this. Like, I really do. You were talking about how you feel like you missed out by not listening to this album. Like, man, where did I want to go? I mean, I feel like kind of missing out now I wish that a lot of these artists would return and come back and, bring this stuff back. Because, like, I didn't take advantage to listening to this back in the day. So I have the luxury of going back to do that. But it'd be cool that if it were grown upon. But it's just grown upon in a different way, in a different,
Right.
And that's what
there's plenty of music that's like this. It's just not, you got to look for it. You got to spend time and effort. It's not going to be pushed in front of you.
Yeah.
Most of the money is being put behind the music that's going to sell now to the younger people.
And it's all still hip hop at the end of the day. It's all just a different form of it.
Right. And it's not to say that music is bad.
No.
It's not that it's bad or anything. It's just
different. And we all have our preferences.
Yeah, and you can, being older and having listened to so many different artists and going into each, era of hip hop and looking at all that, it's easier for us to like take a step back and look at it for what it really is.
Right.
It's not just entertainment to us. It's not just fun, cool music. We're like, it's a little bit more to us. We're like, when we listen to it, it becomes a part of your identity. And that's what you associate yourself with. So like a concept that I liked, I guess it's related to the album title, like soul food, like what you eat is what you consume becomes a part of you. And that's what you are. And it has influence over you. So what you're listening to on a daily basis definitely affects you.
Yeah.
And you may not realize it, and it might be a subtle effect. It may not affect you for years. But if all you're listening to, if you're one-dimensional with the music that you're listening to, you're not going to have the same perspective and understanding of things as if you had a more broad palette of what you consume.
You can't have a narrow view on things. You have to keep it, you have to have a broad not imagination, but just kind of a broad scope on things, because it's definitely, you get more out of that. I'm actually going to relate that to the next song, Blood, because that whole topic, like, no matter what era you grew up listening to or whatever else, like, it's all related. It's just different. Blood talks about how, despite all these conflicts, we're all related. We all have the same blood. Like, we're all the same. And that kind of goes into the whole hip hop talk we were just saying. We're like, yeah, it's all the same. We just got to stop bashing all of it. But the mumble stuff I just can't get behind. But I'm not going to bash it. It's just not for me.
Right.
But
no, I don't think, it's not our place to bash it. Like, bashing it doesn't accomplish anything. Recognizing that there's more out there, and there's other music out there that can offer you a little bit more substance, a little bit more soul food, so to speak.
Goodie Bag.
Dope
Goodie Bag
song.
was a cool song.
Yeah, I love that beat.
Beat was cool. Content was cool. I'm not going to lie, though. Like, I did get a little lost on the song, and I had to hear it a couple times. But, I mean, I think that kind of goes back to what I was saying about you have 4 people on the track and 4 different perspectives. So sometimes, like, Goodie Bag is vague. It's like, oh, Goodie's in the title, so maybe it has to do with the group. But you hear one person's verse, and then I'm going to say, say Cujo. Like, I'm not quite picking up on a lot of the stuff that he's mentioning. But then you'll have someone else. Maybe you have Timo come on, and then he's talking about someone's like, okay, I thought Goodie Bag was about this, though. And then Gip comes in, and it's like, okay. So I have to say, throughout the album, there were times where I didn't, when you have one person doing an album, you get get at least an idea later on. Even if the verses don't make sense, you can be like, well, it's only this person, so I'm gonna go off of like this thing that they said, and I'll take it and run. But when you have 4, it's like I don't really know what I'm supposed to think about this song.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting. I mean, do you think that's a reason why there's not so many groups in hip hop now? Like, just it's too difficult to get everyone on the same page to like write a song.
I mean, it sounds like, back when Outkast decided to go their separate ways, like they both had creative differences in what they wanted to do and the direction they wanted to go. And when you hear the Love Below versus Speaker Box, they're completely different. So I can definitely see that. And I feel like when I'm using Outkast as a example, but when you listen to their verses, like they're also kind of talking about different things in the same song. But yeah, I think of Slaughterhouse, where you have people on 4 different levels. So I mean, with Slaughterhouse, I thought of, well, there's not enough room for all 4 of them to go. Joe Budden has to step out to give Eminem a verse, and then Crooked Eye at the time and Joel Ortiz, they have to share a verse in order to make it work. So I don't know.
But they did that to make a more, like, I feel like the times when they did share a verse or whatever, like they're trying to make a more commercial friendly or radio friendly song where you can't make it 5 minutes long and let everyone go. But a lot of their songs are like that.
Yeah, but that's one of the reasons that I'm talking about, though. Right. Like, it could be time. The first thing that comes to mind is time differences, for what you were just saying. The second one is, in what I felt from this album, is it just gets convoluted because you have too many ideas flowing around.
I mean, this album's definitely long. Outside of the skits, like every song is almost 5 minutes long or longer. So it's like that's a very, especially with our attention span with how we live today, it's very different from 1995.
Yeah. And I think at this
there's not many artists today that are putting out 5-minute songs.
Right.
There might be 1 or 2 on an album, not a whole album of that.
Yeah.
So it is a lot to take in, and sometimes it's hard to like going back and listening to this album. It's like sometimes I could just kind of like zone out and I'm not paying attention to the lyrics because there's so much going on, or like it's hard to follow. And then now I'm just vibing with the beat, and it's kind of just like background music.
So another component to a group thing is that, let's say, partway through Timo's verse, you're starting to fade out because you just heard Big Gip go. So, and it's, it's heading towards the 3-minute mark, and you got another 2 minutes. When CeeLo Green comes on, or if Cujo comes on, or whoever, does that, in other groups or this group, does that bring your attention back? Or is it still the length of the song? And
I think it does. Like when the voices change and they bring a different cadence, or that, they have a different perspective, that definitely can bring you back into the song for sure.
And that's why I'm wondering why, if with these groups and having 5-minute songs, if you have different styles, if it's kind of changing each time. When I was talking to one of my siblings about Travis Scott and Astroworld, and at the time I was making fun of Sicko Mode because I didn't like, there's 3 different beat changes. There's 3 different beats in that song. And I was like, the first one's cool, the second one's all right, the last one sucks. I didn't like it. And he's like, well, that's, that was the best part of it, is like the whole album. It just takes you, I haven't heard the whole album yet, but he's like, it takes you kind of through this roller coaster thing. So, I mean, it's either you have a beat changing, because that song I think is a good 4 to 5 minutes, but the beat changes. But then with Soul Food, you have a group with 4 members. And so the style is changing, but it's still the same beat. So the question is, like, is that enough to keep your attention for 5 minutes?
It depends on the song, really. I mean, some of the songs, no. But I think most of the songs, yeah. Like, if the beat's really good, like the different artists, when they come in, it brings you back to paying attention again.
Right. And, I have to say, like, this is where sometimes it lost me, because I wasn't, I feel like Big Gip and Cujo sounded similar, but I felt like Big Gip was better lyrically, but I didn't like Cujo's style. So like if he was going, I would But then, the Gibb comes on. I was like, okay, this is a little bit better, but he still sounds like Cujo because I don't really like his voice.
Right.
Timo is all right, but CeeLo would bring me back in. I'd be like, okay, cool. Because like I said, like in a lot of his songs, he defined the song for me where it's like, for me, I'm going to throw out the other 3 verses, and this is what I'm defining the song as. So as we go and we talk about soul food, it was his verse. They all made sense in this song. But CeeLo really brought it all together because he was talking about, everything. I'm not going to, this isn't his lyric in the song, but verbatim. But he's talking about how like everything he's done, everything he's gone through and has been told contributed to who he is now. He would, if he had another opportunity, he wouldn't take the easy way out. And, talking about soul food now, like that really vibed with me because, I've been I have lived in certain situations that were tough, but I wouldn't trade them back for anything else. They really give you
they shape who you are.
They shape who you are. They kind of they toughen you up a little bit. But and to clarify soul food with the song too, like it's not. They talk about eating, of course, and I like how they talk about the home cooked meals and everything and spending time. In Black culture, that's what soul food is. It's just being with each other and cooking good meals and stuff and really spending that family quality time. Right. So they talk about food in this, but the meat and potatoes of it is really like your upbringing, the knowledge that you get, and how, as you said, how it shapes you over time. And so, and encompassing the whole album where they're talking about different social issues, their upbringing, societal issues, or whatever else, like all of that has like developed, has fed their soul into who they are. And I thought that was really cool, wrap around bringing everything together, really tied everything together.
Yeah. Like you said, I agree with everything you said. Like, it is a cool concept to talk about the food, but then just like in general, what it means to have soul food, like, and not just the food sense, but like feeding your soul to like, make you feel, fulfilled, or comfortable or safe or whatever it is. Like you're feeding your soul so that you're not in a bad place with yourself. Like you're in a good place and you're feeling good and you're around people that care about you. That's kind of what I got from it.
Yeah. No, that was, I think fulfilled is like a really good way to really define that.
Yeah, and this whole album, I think, why it's called Soul Food is like that. Like all these songs, going back to the length, like even just looking at the length of the songs, like soul food is heavy. It's fried or it's got a lot of oil or whatever. It's like, it's very filling.
But so is life.
And it's light, yeah.
Life is very filling and it has a lot of stuff to digest at times. And sometimes it'll stick in your, whether if it's food or whatnot, maybe it'll stick in your intestines, maybe it'll stick in your head and just be digested for a long time until it's finally processed through. But it takes a long time.
Yeah.
I like the next couple tracks. Funeral, you get the sense that someone passed away, obviously. Whether if it's someone close, whether someone that you've known has been around, but it's like, they were in the same predicament that I'm in, and their story isn't any different from mine. They got unlucky. But as we were talking earlier, like we don't expect to live this long, and they got caught. So I like how it talked about the cons of being money motivated because you're living one day at a time trying to survive. And it's like, no, I just got to get this money. Like, I'm not worried about some of the things I like doing right now. I want to travel more. This is not at this time a priority to them to go and travel, go to Disneyland or whatever else, to go to Europe. But, they're talking about, trying to loosen up the noose around my neck, and it's rough out here. So we're trying to do all these things to make it easier, but it's a struggle, and we're fighting to stay alive, and it's hard. I really like CeeLo's verse, and him talking about breaking the cycle, and him pondering, the person that died it may have been a blessing, because that at this point we see that as our only way out of this hole, is death. So maybe he actually got the good way out.
Right. He's gone on to a better place where he's not gonna have to struggle or deal with whatever life throws at you.
It's deep. I mean, it's interesting to kind of think.
Definitely deep stuff. Most of the songs are pretty deep. Like it's not really. There's none of the songs are lighthearted.
No, there's not. I mean, fighting. Like I said, my favorite track on the album. Like we're fighting for our spirit and mind, because we're just trapped into this life, this revolving door, this cycle.
Right.
That's deep, and it's real for a lot of people. However, the next track after that is like, to me, in reading into it and relating it to the album, is like, despite all this, like, we're coming up and we're coming back. Like, we're going to fight our way out of here. So it does show, like, even though the album touches on some sad and deep things, there is a sense of optimism. And then through the end of the album, it's that we made it. We did do it. We're talking about coming up. We've been down a long time, but we're going to make it out of here. This
it's like a happy ending.
Yeah.
Way to with the album.
Yeah. And then referring back to the KRS-One album, where he's talking about, I want a God that looks like me and better represents me. I don't know how I'm going to form this question, but I'm going to talk about the two thoughts. KRS-One saying that, and then CeeLo Green saying in this interlude that God is working through white people to build us up. That, if everything we do is God's will, and they're doing this and it's affecting us, then God must be doing this for our betterment.
To put black people through a struggle, and then for them to come out,
as we said,
better afterwards,
feeding us all this soul food, all this knowledge, everything in our environment and everything, to build us up, to empower us to become stronger people. It's an interesting thing to kind of compare the two things, because it's like, okay, like, here KRS-One is, questioning God and stuff and saying, like, well, it's to the betterment of white people. Like, this has nothing to do with me. But then CeeLo Green flipping and saying, like, no, but this is to our betterment, because he was saying how I believe in God. So this is and everyone will say, like, this is a test. God is putting a test on us. Heavy.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And that's a pretty powerful thing to talk about, like, on CeeLo Green's part, to put that in this album and to talk about that, like, if God's will is for us to live like this, and he's like accepting it, and he's like, okay, then I'm going to utilize my talents or my gifts to better myself, or to better my community, or better my family. I'm not just going to sit back and point fingers and be angry at everyone, or angry at God for putting me in this place that I'm in. He's kind of like saying, like, no, God put me here because I'm going to get out of it. I'm going to be better.
Right. And that leads us to the last track of The Day After. The chorus goes, I'm so happy we made it. I knew one day we would. All these years of struggling, we never understood. Now my eyes are open. I can clearly see we didn't die for nothing, because we're finally free. So it's through all of this that we made it made it out and on top, and we made a change. It happened. There are a lot of, sacrifices along the way and things happening, and it wasn't easy. And as we go through the album, we see that, but it's kind of cool, because, like we were saying, like, it goes through a lot of deep stuff, but then it turns, you see the optimism, and then it comes out in a good mindset. I mean, I feel like a lot of tracks on here are, as we've discussed, are, it's soul food, but what makes soul food? And, they give it away in that track. and it's almost like you start in the middle, because I think that track is in the center of the album, and then going through the different tracks to see like what they mean. Mm-hmm. So then jumping around the album, and then going to the end track to see like, you know, it sucked, but we're here. So I kind of, it's not until you kind of say it out loud, but you know, you think of the album, it's like, yeah, that was a cool journey. Like that was a good album.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Is like it was a journey. It was kind of like they're taking you through life, what life is like with them, and their perspectives, and like they're walking you through everything about how they feel about where they are, or what kind of situations they're in, and they're talking about how they've overcome it, or they've, you know, they're taking in the soul food and digesting it and being better for it.
Right. So, but I don't know. I mean, overall, we're feeling it. I don't know. Are you playing it? How are you playing it? Are you playing it for the groups? Are you playing it for yourself? Background?
I was thinking this would be a cool album, kind of similar to the KRS-One album. This is a cool album to play in the background if you're hanging out with some people just at your house, like at a party or something. Mm-hmm. Just throw this album on. Even though it's got some deep concepts and stuff, it's still a fun album to listen to.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, maybe take out the skits. That might slow down the party a little bit, but
for sure. Fortunately, the skits in this one, they're not too long.
They're not too long. Yeah, they're usually under a minute.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think it's gonna be, you know, I play it in the background for, you know, for a couple friends and stuff as we're doing something.
I don't know if I'm necessarily like gonna be in the car with a friend and be like, "Yo, you need to listen to this album. Like,
right.
You need to pay attention and listen to this," because it is a lot to take in. Like there's a lot going on, so it sounds good. So I think just having it on in the background, and maybe not you're not like paying so much attention to all the lyrics, but if you're just having it on, like it's a cool album.
Yeah, and that's the cool part. I mean, it's interesting too, because you know we have similar tastes in music, and it's interesting. It'd be interesting to see what other people thought as they heard this, because I can see. But I liked it. It's going to the background. I would play it for people, and definitely would recommend. Like, hey, if you want insight onto struggles.
It's a dope album. I'm still mad that I didn't listen to this when I was younger. Yeah, I'm kicking myself for that one.
Yeah, same. See it.
All right,
yeah, man.
That is our rap thoughts on Goodie Mob's Soul Food.
Those are the thoughts.